It was a quiet evening in the peaceful village of Willowbrook, the air soft with the scent of blooming flowers. The stars were just beginning to twinkle in the sky, and the moon cast a silver glow over the land. Among the whispering trees, there lived a curious child named Ella. Ella loved exploring the forests, meadows, and fields around her village, always looking for something new and exciting. Little did she know that on this particular evening, her curiosity would lead her to discover a secret hidden deep within the heart of the forest, a magical place filled with tiny, gentle creatures. Part 1. The Secret Path. Ella was a curious little girl with a heart full of wonder. She lived in a peaceful village called Willowbrook, nestled in the valley between two rolling hills. The village was surrounded by lush green forests and fields dotted with colorful wildflowers. Every day, after finishing her chores, Ella would wander into the woods, seeking adventure. Her favorite thing to do was to explore, to find hidden places, and to listen to the stories the trees seemed to whisper in the wind. But on this particular evening, something felt different. Something was calling her to go deeper into the forest than ever before. The sky above Willowbrook was beginning to darken, with the last golden rays of the sun slipping below the horizon. The moon was just beginning to rise, casting a soft silver light over the land. Ella, wearing her favorite red scarf, stepped out the door of her cottage and into the cool evening air. Her heart fluttered with excitement, for today was different. The forest seemed to beckon to her, a feeling deep inside her stirring, urging her to go further than usual. She had often explored the edge of the woods, but tonight the trees whispered something new, something inviting and mysterious. With a skip in her step, Ella set off down the familiar path that led into the forest. The leaves underfoot crunched softly as she walked, and the scent of pine and earth filled the air. It was a calm evening, with only the occasional chirp of crickets and the rustle of a distant squirrel's tail to break the silence. As Ella ventured deeper into the woods, the light from the moon filtered through the branches above, casting long shadows that seemed to dance on the forest floor. She marveled at how the trees grew taller and closer together, their trunks thick and strong, their branches weaving a canopy above her. It felt like stepping into another world, one that was full of secrets and untold stories. After walking for what felt like an eternity, Ella came to a small clearing where the path forked into two. Normally, she would choose the path that led to the stream she loved to visit, but tonight something was different. A soft, glowing light caught her attention, coming from the direction of the second path. It wasn't bright like a lantern, but it shimmered gently like the glow of fireflies. Intrigued, Ella hesitated for only a moment before turning onto the glowing path. With each step, the glow grew brighter, and the air around her seemed warmer, as though the forest itself was welcoming her. She felt a sense of wonder that was almost magical, as if she were walking in a dream. The path wound through tall ferns and thick moss, the ground soft beneath her feet. The light ahead led her deeper into the woods, past trees so ancient they looked as though they had been standing for centuries. And then, just when she thought the light would lead her to a secret treasure, Ella stopped in her tracks. She had reached a clearing, but not just any clearing. Before her stood a glowing doorway, framed by vines and flowers that shimmered in the moonlight. It wasn't a doorway made of stone or wood, but one formed entirely by nature. Delicate vines that twisted and turned, creating an arch that seemed to glow with an inner light. The flowers that adorned the vines were unlike any she had ever seen. Their petals sparkled like diamonds, casting a soft, magical glow that bathed the clearing in light. Ella blinked in surprise. She had never seen anything like it. The doorway looked so inviting, so full of mystery. It seemed like a secret passage, hidden away from the world, waiting for someone brave enough to discover it. Her heart raced with excitement, and without thinking, she took a step toward the doorway. As her foot touched the ground, the flowers shimmered even brighter, and the vines gently parted, as if giving her permission to enter. With a deep breath, Ella stepped through the doorway, her heart beating faster in her chest. The moment she crossed the threshold, the world around her seemed to change. The air felt warmer, the scent of flowers stronger, and the gentle hum of nature filled her ears. It was as if she had stepped into another world altogether, a world where magic flowed through the trees and the very earth beneath her feet. Ella stood still for a moment, taking in her surroundings. Before her lay a village, but it wasn't a village like any she had ever seen. The houses were made of giant mushrooms, their caps forming roofs that were covered in soft moss and tiny flowers. The streets were lined with tall, swaying grasses that seemed to shimmer in the light, and in the distance she could see little creatures, no taller than her knee, walking around, going about their business. They weren't human, yet they looked friendly and kind. There were tiny fairies with delicate wings, small creatures with long ears, and even a few talking animals, all moving about in harmony. Ella's breath caught in her throat. This was no ordinary village. It was a magical village, hidden away from the world of humans, full of creatures who lived in peace with the forest and each other. She had found something truly extraordinary, something no one else in her village had ever seen. A soft rustling caught her attention, and Ella turned to see a tiny creature hopping toward her. It looked like a squirrel, but its fur was a soft golden color, and it wore a tiny bow tie that made it look even more charming. The little creature stopped in front of Ella and looked up at her with bright, twinkling eyes. "Well, hello there," the squirrel said, its voice high-pitched and cheerful. "Welcome to our village, dear traveler. We don't often have humans visit, but it's always a pleasure to meet someone new." Ella blinked in surprise. The squirrel was speaking to her, talking just like a person. She knelt down to meet it at eye level, her excitement bubbling over. I don't know how I ended up here," Ella said, her voice filled with wonder. "This is the most magical place I've ever seen." The squirrel smiled warmly. "You must be special then to have found your way to our village. Not many humans have the ability to see the doorway to our world. But you're here now, and that's what matters most." Ella's heart swelled with happiness. She felt like she had discovered a secret world, a hidden treasure that no one else knew about. She was about to ask more questions when the squirrel waved a tiny paw and said, "Follow me, dear. Let me show you around." Ella stood and followed the squirrel as it led her down the path toward the heart of the village. She looked around in awe at the tiny houses and the magical creatures going about their work. There was a fairy carefully picking berries from a glowing bush, a small rabbit-like creature weaving threads from spider silk into delicate patterns, and a tiny gnome tending to a garden of shimmering plants. It was a place of beauty and wonder, a place where everything seemed to have its own special magic. As they walked, Ella couldn't help but smile. She felt like she had stepped into a dream, a world where kindness and magic filled every corner. The creatures here were small, but their hearts seemed so big, and Ella was about to learn just how important the little things could be. The squirrel led Ella to a small bench beneath a tree with glowing leaves. "Rest here for a moment," the squirrel said. "I'll gather the others. There is much to share with you, and much you can learn from our village." Ella sat down on the soft moss, her heart full of excitement and curiosity. She couldn't wait to learn more about this magical place. Little did she know, this was only the beginning of her adventure, and the lessons she would learn from the tiny creatures of the village would stay with her forever. The adventure had just begun. Part 2. The Village of Tiny Folk. As Ella sat on the soft moss beneath the glowing tree, the gentle hum of the village filled the air. She marveled at how peaceful everything seemed. Tiny creatures bustled around, working together, helping each other, and living in harmony with the nature around them. Every sound, every sight was new and magical to Ella, like stepping into a world she had only heard about in fairy tales. The squirrel returned a few moments later, this time accompanied by two other creatures. One was a tiny blue-winged fairy with sparkling eyes and a radiant smile, and the other was a small gnome, his pointed hat almost touching the top of his round belly. The fairy flitted over to Ella and landed gracefully on a mushroom cap beside her. "Welcome, welcome," the fairy said in a voice like a soft breeze. "It's not often we have visitors from your world. My name is Zephyr and this is Bramble," she gestured to the gnome beside her. "And of course you've already met Pippin," she said with a wink toward the squirrel. Ella smiled and waved at the group, feeling more at home than she had ever felt. "I can't believe I'm here. This place is beautiful. Everything is so magical." Pippin, the squirrel, nodded enthusiastically. "It is, isn't it? We've spent years here in harmony with the forest, taking care of the plants, the trees, and all the animals. But we have a special secret we want to share with you." "Really? What is it?" Ella asked, her eyes widening with curiosity. "You'll see soon enough," said Zephyr with a wink. "But first, we'll give you a tour of our village, so you can learn how we live." The three creatures led Ella through the village, showing her all the magical wonders they had cultivated. As they walked, Zephyr explained the customs of the tiny folk, their love for nature, and how they worked together to care for the forest. She told Ella about the ways in which they used their small size to their advantage, how they could slip into the tiniest of spaces and reach places that larger creatures could not. In fact, every tiny creature had a special job in the village, contributing in ways that were often invisible but incredibly important. Ella was fascinated by all the little details. There were homes built in hollowed-out mushrooms, gardens tended to by gnomes and fairies, and fields where tiny animals planted seeds by hand, taking care to protect the delicate plants from harm. The village was a bustling hub of activity, yet there was a quiet calm to everything, as if time itself moved at a gentler pace here. "We may be small, but we do big things," Pippin said proudly. "Just look at the village. It's grown from a single mushroom house into this beautiful place over the years." "That's right," said Bramble the gnome. "Small doesn't mean weak. We've learned that size doesn't determine how much we can do for the world. We all have something special to offer." Ella thought about this as they walked through the village. It was true. The tiny folk may have been small, but they seemed to possess an incredible amount of energy and strength. Their community thrived because of the way they worked together, each contributing their unique talents. She had never considered how the smallest of creatures could make such a big difference. "Come, let me show you our most important place," Zephyr said, her wings fluttering excitedly. She led Ella down a winding path that led to a large tree in the center of the village. The tree was massive, its trunk twisted and gnarled, and its branches stretched high into the sky. Beneath the tree was a large stone circle, surrounded by flowers and soft, glowing light. It looked like a place of great importance. "This," said Zephyr, "is our circle of unity. It's where we gather to share our thoughts, dreams, and ideas. It's where we celebrate our strengths and help each other grow. We all have something to offer here, no matter how small." Ella stood in awe, staring up at the tree. She felt a deep sense of calm in this place, as though the very earth beneath her feet was humming with energy. She could tell that this was a place of deep connection and shared purpose. "What happens here?" Ella asked softly. "This is where we come together to solve problems," said Bramble. "We meet here when we need help or when we want to share a discovery. It's a place of openness and collaboration. And even though we're small, we've learned that by coming together, we can accomplish great things." Ella nodded, taking it all in. She could sense that the village was not just a place of magic and beauty. It was a place where kindness and unity were the driving forces behind everything. The tiny folk may have been small, but their hearts were as big as the stars. As they sat down in the circle of unity, Zephyr looked at Ella and said, "We're so glad you found your way here. We think you're someone who understands the value of small things." Ella smiled. "I think so too. I've always loved exploring and finding little treasures in the world. But I never realized how much those little things can mean." Pippin, who had been hopping around the tree, stopped and looked at Ella with wide, serious eyes. "You know, sometimes humans don't see the magic in small things. You think the big things are what matter, like giant castles, big mountains, or the tallest trees. But here we've learned that the tiny things, like a dewdrop on a leaf or a flower blooming in the shade, hold just as much beauty and importance." Ella thought about this for a moment. She had always loved the grand things in life, the towering trees, the beautiful fields, but the small things had always fascinated her as well. The way a bird's feather floated in the air, the way the wind rustled through the leaves, the way the stars twinkled in the sky. There was magic in those moments, in the tiny, delicate details of the world. "Tell me more about how you work together," Ella said, eager to learn more. "It's amazing how everyone has a role, even though you're so small." Bramble nodded. "It's true. We may be small, but we know that we each have something special to offer. Whether it's a skill, a talent, or a kind heart, we all contribute in our own way. No one is too small to make a difference." Zephyr added, "We've learned that even the smallest action can create ripples that spread throughout the village. Like when one of us shares a smile or when we help a friend. It may seem small, but those moments of kindness can change everything." Ella felt a warmth in her heart. She had always believed in kindness, but hearing it from the tiny folk made her realize just how powerful it could be. She had so much to learn from them, and she couldn't wait to see what other lessons this magical village had to offer. As the evening settled in, the stars above began to twinkle even brighter, casting their soft glow over the village. Ella felt as though she had stepped into a dream, but she knew that the lessons she was learning here were real. Lessons about kindness, cooperation, and the importance of even the smallest actions. It was time to rest, but Ella knew that tomorrow would bring more discoveries, more magic, and more lessons from the tiny folk. The village had much to teach her, and she was ready to listen. Part 3. The Beauty of Small Things. The night had settled over the village, and the soft glow of the moon bathed everything in a gentle light. Ella sat by the glowing fire in the heart of the village, surrounded by the tiny folk. The fire flickered and danced, its warm light reflecting off the shimmering leaves of nearby trees. The air was filled with the sound of crickets chirping and the gentle rustling of the leaves. It felt like a world of peace and magic, a place where every tiny detail mattered and every small act of kindness created ripples of warmth. After their walk through the village, Ella had spent some time sitting in the circle of unity, where the tiny folk came together to share their stories and thoughts. She had learned so much already. Now, as the fire crackled before her, Zephyr, the fairy, stood up with a warm smile. "It's time for you to see something truly special, Ella," Zephyr said, her wings glimmering in the firelight. "Something that will show you just how important the small things really are." Ella's curiosity was piqued. "What is it?" Zephyr motioned for Ella to follow, and with a flick of her wings, she darted off toward the edge of the village. Ella stood up and followed, her heart racing with excitement. She was about to discover yet another secret of this magical village. The fairy led her toward a secluded grove, hidden from the rest of the village. As they walked, Ella noticed the air became sweeter, the scent of flowers and fresh earth growing stronger with every step. The trees here were different from the others, taller with wide, open branches that seemed to create a canopy of stars above. The moonlight filtered through the leaves, casting a silvery glow on the ground beneath them. In the center of the grove was a small pond, its waters so still they looked like glass. The surface of the pond shimmered with the light of the stars, and tiny flowers floated on the water's surface. Around the pond, delicate plants and mosses grew, their colors vibrant against the backdrop of the night. "This is our secret place," Zephyr whispered. "It's a place where we come to reflect, to think, and to appreciate the beauty of the smallest things." Ella stepped forward, mesmerized by the tranquil beauty of the scene. As she knelt by the edge of the pond, she noticed something extraordinary. At the very bottom of the pond were tiny creatures, glowing, translucent beings that looked like little stars swimming beneath the surface. Their bodies shimmered with soft, radiant light, and as they moved, they created ripples that spread out across the water. "These are the glow bugs," Zephyr explained. "They are very small, but they bring so much light to our village. They light up the darkest places, guiding us when we need them most. Every night, they swim through the water, leaving trails of light in their wake." Ella watched in awe as the tiny glow bugs swam gracefully, their glow illuminating the entire pond. It was magical, so small yet so powerful. The pond seemed alive with their light, and Ella felt a deep sense of wonder. "How do they do it?" Ella asked, her voice filled with amazement. "It's their gift," Zephyr explained. "Glow bugs may be tiny, but they have the ability to bring light into the darkness. Even the smallest spark can light up the world around us. We rely on them to guide us, just as you can rely on your own heart to guide you through life. It's the small acts of kindness, the small sparks of goodness, that make the biggest difference." Ella thought about this as she watched the glow bugs dance across the water. It was so true. How often had she underestimated the importance of small acts? A kind word, a small smile, a little helping hand, these things mattered. They could light up someone's day, just like the glow bugs illuminated the pond. As they sat in silence by the water, Zephyr continued, "Sometimes we forget how much beauty there is in the small things around us. We focus on the big moments, the grand gestures, but it's the small, everyday things that make life truly magical. Just like the glow bugs, each one of us has a spark inside. And when we share that spark with others, we create ripples of light." Ella smiled, her heart swelling with understanding. "I never thought of it that way. I always thought the big things were the most important, like the tall trees or the grand castles. But now I see that the little things, the tiny moments, are just as important." Zephyr nodded. "Exactly. It's the tiny moments that often have the biggest impact. A single raindrop can start a river. A single seed can grow into a mighty tree. And a single act of kindness can change someone's life." Ella's eyes sparkled as she watched the glow bugs twirl and dive beneath the water. She could see the beauty in the small things now. The way the light flickered in the darkness, the way the flowers bloomed from the tiniest of seeds, the way a single smile could brighten a person's day. The world was full of these small, magical moments, and they were waiting to be noticed. As they sat by the pond, Zephyr told Ella more stories of the tiny creatures in the village and how they used their smallness to do big things. There was the tiny rabbit who could slip through the tiniest cracks to fetch seeds for the village's garden. There was the fairy who wove intricate baskets from spider silk, so small that no one else could ever see the delicate details. And there was Pippin, the squirrel, who could climb the tallest trees and gather nuts from the highest branches, bringing them down to share with everyone in the village. "They all have something special to offer," Zephyr said softly. "And so do you, Ella. You may not think you have the same gifts as us, but the truth is, every person has something unique to share. The important thing is that you use your gifts to help others, no matter how small they seem." Ella looked at Zephyr, her heart full of gratitude. "I've learned so much from all of you. I used to think that being small meant you couldn't do big things. But now I know that the smallest things can make the biggest difference. Zephyr smiled, her wings shimmering in the moonlight. You've learned the most important lesson, Ella. It's not about how big or small you are. It's about how much heart you put into what you do. The world is full of tiny wonders, waiting to be discovered. All you have to do is look closely and appreciate the beauty in them. Ella nodded, feeling a deep sense of peace and contentment. She had learned that it wasn't the size of something that made it special. It was the love, kindness, and effort that went into it. Whether big or small, every act mattered, and every moment was a gift. As the night deepened, Ella and Zephyr made their way back to the village. The glow bugs continued to swim in the pond, their light twinkling like tiny stars. Ella felt like she had stepped into a world of magic, a world where the smallest things held the most power. And as she walked back through the glowing village, she knew she would carry the lessons of the tiny folk with her forever. The beauty of small things wasn't just something she could see. It was something she could feel in her heart. And that was the most magical thing of all. Part 4. Kindness and sharing. The morning sun broke gently through the trees, casting a soft golden light across the village. Ella had awoken early, feeling a sense of peace and excitement in her heart. After the deep, insightful moments of the previous night, she knew she was about to learn even more in this magical village of the tiny folk. Zephyr, Pippin, and Bramble had shared so much wisdom, and she was eager to explore more of their world. Today, however, would be different. It would be about learning how even the smallest gestures of kindness could change everything. The tiny village was bustling with activity. Fairies fluttered around, their delicate wings shimmering like the colors of the rainbow, as they tended to their daily tasks. The gnomes were busy harvesting vegetables from the garden, and small creatures like rabbits and squirrels scurried about, carrying nuts and berries to share with others. It was a place where everyone seemed to have a role, where each little being was important, no matter how small. Pippin, the cheerful squirrel, was the first to find Ella. "Good morning, Ella," he greeted her with a wide grin. "Ready for another adventure today?" Ella smiled warmly, feeling as though she had known Pippin her entire life. "Good morning. I can't wait to see what's in store today. I've learned so much already." "Well, today is about something very special," Pippin said with a wink. "Today we're going to learn about the power of kindness and sharing. You see, no matter how small we are, our actions can make a big difference. But it's not just about big things. It's the little acts of kindness that matter the most." Ella's curiosity piqued. Kindness and sharing. I already know that sharing is important, but I want to learn more about how small actions can make a big impact. Pippin led Ella through the village, their footsteps soft on the mossy ground. As they walked, he explained more about the village's philosophy of kindness and sharing. "In our village," Pippin began, "we believe that kindness is the heart of everything we do. Every action, no matter how small, creates a ripple effect. A kind word, a helping hand, even just listening to someone. These small gestures are what keep our village thriving." Ella thought about this. She had always known the importance of kindness, but hearing it from the tiny folk, who lived their lives so carefully and thoughtfully, made her realize how much more it meant. She had seen their way of life, how they worked together, shared everything, and helped one another without hesitation. It was a community built on trust, compassion, and a deep sense of connection. As they walked past a garden of bright flowers, Pippin stopped and pointed to a small, elderly gnome who was struggling to carry a basket of vegetables that was much too heavy for him. Ella watched as the gnome huffed and puffed, trying to lift the basket, but his small arms were too tired. Without a second thought, Pippin dashed over to help. "Let me help you with that, Gran," he called cheerfully. Gran, the elderly gnome, looked up in surprise but smiled gratefully. "Ah, Pippin, you always know when to step in. I do tend to take on more than I can carry these days." Pippin grinned. "It's nothing, Gran. We all help each other out here. No one is too small to lend a hand." Ella watched in awe as Pippin helped Gran lift the basket and carry it to the village square, where the other gnomes were gathering for a community feast. Gran's tired face lit up with gratitude, and the entire village seemed to echo with a sense of warmth and unity. It wasn't just the physical help that mattered. It was the act of kindness itself, the way everyone came together no matter their size. "Did you see that?" Pippin asked, turning to Ella with a smile. Gran might have been too tired to carry the basket, but it was the little help from me that made all the difference. Sometimes it's not about doing something grand. It's the simple act of being there for someone that counts. Ella nodded, feeling a deep understanding wash over her. "I see now. Kindness doesn't have to be a big gesture. It's the small things, the little moments of helping one another, that make the biggest difference." Pippin chuckled. "Exactly. And the best part is, those small acts of kindness spread. When someone is kind to you, you feel like being kind to someone else. It creates a cycle, a ripple that grows and grows." As they continued through the village, Ella saw more examples of kindness in action. A young fairy helped an older one pick up a bundle of fallen flowers. A rabbit offered a carrot to a squirrel who had lost its acorn. A group of gnomes were sharing their freshly baked bread with each other, passing pieces along with laughter and warmth. It was a place where no one went without, where everyone shared what they had and looked out for one another. Ella realized that this wasn't just about giving. It was about connection, about creating a world where every small gesture mattered, where kindness was not a rare act but a daily way of life. As they reached the village square, Pippin led Ella to a large tree where the village's feast was being prepared. The smell of freshly baked bread, roasted vegetables, and sweet fruit filled the air, and the tiny folk gathered around, chatting and laughing. It was a celebration, a way to honor the kindness they had shared with one another throughout the year. "Come join us," Pippin called to Ella, leading her to a seat at the table. "Today we celebrate not just our harvest but the kindness and sharing that makes our village so special." Ella sat down at the table, feeling a deep sense of belonging. She noticed how everyone shared everything. There was no mine or yours here, only ours. The food was shared freely, and the conversation flowed easily, full of warmth and joy. It was as if kindness had woven its way into every part of their lives, creating a community where everyone was cared for and valued. As the feast went on, Zephyr flitted over to Ella and whispered, "You've seen how kindness works in our village. Now it's time to see how it can work in your world too. The world outside may not always be as magical as this one, but the magic of kindness is something you can carry with you wherever you go." Ella looked at Zephyr, her heart full of gratitude. "I'll never forget what I've learned here. I'll take the lessons of kindness with me, and I'll make sure to spread it everywhere I go." Zephyr smiled warmly. "That's all we can do. The world needs kindness now more than ever. And even the smallest actions can change the world." As the feast continued, Ella sat back, taking in the beauty of the moment. She realized that it wasn't just the magic of this village that made it special. It was the way every creature, no matter how small, worked together to create a world of warmth and kindness. When Ella returned home, she knew she would never look at the world in the same way. The tiny village had shown her the true power of kindness and sharing, how small actions could create a ripple of goodness that spread far and wide. And in her heart, she knew that no matter how small she might feel at times, she could always make a big difference through kindness. Part 5. Returning home. The next morning, Ella awoke with a gentle sense of peace. her heart brimming with everything she had learned during her time in the tiny village. The village was quiet now, the morning sun slowly climbing into the sky, bathing the landscape in golden light. It felt as if the entire world had been reset, fresh and full of possibility. Yet, Ella knew it was time to leave. The magical village had opened her eyes to a new world, one that was full of beauty in the small things and strength in kindness, but she had to return home. She stood up from her small bed, gazing out the window of her mushroom house. The village was waking up. The soft sounds of tiny feet tapping against the mossy ground filled the air. Ella could see the little creatures already starting their day, working together, laughing, and sharing in the spirit of unity that the village had so carefully nurtured. The peace of the place lingered in her heart, and she felt deeply grateful for the lessons it had taught her. As she dressed and prepared to leave, Pippin appeared at her door. He was holding a small bundle wrapped in leaves, his tiny eyes shining with excitement. "I knew you would be leaving today," Pippin said, his voice full of warmth. "But before you go, I wanted to give you something." Ella looked at the bundle curiously. "What is it?" she asked, her heart softening at the sight of Pippin's thoughtful gesture. "It's a little something to remind you of us," Pippin said with a twinkle in his eye. He handed her the bundle, and when she unwrapped it, Ella found a tiny pouch made of spider silk. Inside, there were a few small, sparkling seeds, each one glowing faintly. They were beautiful and magical, just like the tiny creatures of the village. "These are the seeds of kindness," Pippin explained. "They don't grow like regular plants, but if you plant them in your heart, they'll help remind you of what you've learned here. Whenever you feel lost, or when the world seems too big, just close your eyes and think of the kindness you've shared, and it will help you grow." Ella smiled, her heart swelling with emotion. "Thank you, Pippin. I'll carry these seeds with me always." Pippin smiled back. "Take care, Ella. Remember, kindness is a magic all its own. You can always make a difference, no matter where you are." Ella nodded, feeling a deep connection to the little squirrel. She would never forget the tiny village, and she would always remember the lessons it had taught her. With a final hug, Ella said goodbye to Pippin and the rest of the village. The creatures waved from their homes, their smiles filled with warmth and understanding. She made her way back to the glowing doorway, which had opened just for her. As she passed through the archway and stepped into the forest, she turned to look one last time at the magical village behind her. The trees seemed to whisper softly, as if saying goodbye. The door slowly closed behind her, and the village faded from view, leaving Ella with a sense of peaceful finality. But even as the doorway closed, Ella felt a warmth spread throughout her chest, a warmth that came from within. She realized that the magic she had discovered in the tiny village wasn't just in the place itself. It was within her all along. She carried the lessons of kindness, sharing, and the beauty of small things with her, and that magic would be with her wherever she went. The forest around her seemed different now, filled with new meaning. The leaves rustled with a different kind of whisper, one that felt like a secret of the world, a reminder of everything she had learned. The sky seemed brighter, the sun warmer. As she walked back down the path toward Willowbrook, Ella noticed the tiny things she had once overlooked. The way the flowers swayed gently in the breeze, the soft hum of the bees as they gathered nectar, the glint of sunlight on a spider's web. It was as if the world was telling her that magic was everywhere, if you only knew how to see it. When Ella finally arrived back in Willowbrook, it was as if the village itself welcomed her back, embracing her with the same warmth she had felt in the tiny village. She rushed home to her parents, her heart full of excitement and love. They were surprised by her glowing face and the stories she had to tell. But Ella didn't need to explain everything. She knew that the lessons she had learned in the village weren't just for her to keep. They were for everyone she met. As she shared the seeds of kindness with her family, Ella found herself speaking with more purpose. She explained how she had learned the true magic of kindness and sharing, how even the smallest acts could bring the most profound changes. Her parents listened intently, their faces softening as they took in her words. And as the days passed, Ella made sure to carry the lessons she had learned into every aspect of her life. She shared kindness with her friends, helped her neighbors, and cared for the world around her. Every time she encountered a challenge or felt uncertain, she remembered the tiny village and the glowing seeds of kindness in her heart. Ella's life became a reflection of the magic she had discovered. And as she continued to grow, so did her understanding of the small yet powerful ways she could impact the world. She planted the seeds of kindness wherever she went, and they flourished, spreading out like the ripples in a pond. Each time she helped someone, shared a moment of joy, or showed empathy, the world seemed to brighten just a little bit more. And one day, when Ella was much older, she found herself back in the same forest. She had grown, and the world around her had changed too. But she still remembered the tiny village, the creatures who lived there, and the lessons she had learned. She smiled as she noticed the glowing door once again standing before her. This time, Ella wasn't a curious child. She was a wise woman, someone who had carried the magic of kindness with her throughout her life. As the door opened and she stepped through, she felt the same warmth in her heart. She had come full circle. In the village of the tiny folk, she would always be welcome. And just like them, she now understood that no matter how small a person might feel, their kindness was the greatest magic of all.